Please, sir. Perfect, thank you. Please make sure that everyone is muted. We're going to be able to record this meeting so that folks can come back and watch it later in case they couldn't get on the call tonight. So we want to make sure that there's not a ton of background noise as my daughter is coughing in the background. We want to make sure that there's not a lot of background noise while we're doing the recording. To get us started off, I just want to do a couple short introductions here real quick. First, I see Lauren Randall, our district executive in the Wabash Valley District, is on here. Sherry Collins, our district executive in the Peshawar District, is on. And Alan Parks, our scout executive and CEO, is also on here tonight. For some of you, this might be your first opportunity to see and interact with Alan, but he is on here. I don't know where he is on your screen, but he's in the top left of my screen. We got a bunch of volunteers on here, some of you that I know, some of you that I don't know. And so my name is Brian Haverstick, and I am the Assistant Scout Executive for the Sagamore Council. Al Harvath is our Council Commissioner, and he is going to take the lead on tonight's meeting and walk us through how do we navigate the future relationships of the Boy Scouts of America, Sagamore Council, and the United Methodist Churches that we have as chartering organizations here in the Sagamore Council. The chat function is open. We're going to monitor that throughout the course of the meeting. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to throw them in the chat, and we will try to answer them as quickly as we can. And there will be a question and answer section at the end of the meeting as well. All right, Al, I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm driving your PowerPoint, so just tell me when to click.
All right, thank you, Brian. And again, if you can, please mute so that we can have a good, clean recording for folks coming back later. I'd like to welcome everybody. I'd like to thank you all for coming on here tonight to talk through this. This is a complicated issue that we've been handed, and we'll work through this together. And everybody's number one objective here is to maintain continuity of program and continuity of experience for our youth. So that is the number one goal, why we're all here, and what we'll keep in focus as we go through this process. So where we are today, this is our current status. There are 14 different United Methodist Church chartering organizations that are affected by the current agreement between Boy Scouts of America and United Methodist Church. That agreement is that the United Methodist Church will no longer charter Boy Scout units past December 31, 2022. The units that are currently chartered through December 31 will have to go through this process we're going to talk through tonight by the end of the year. And we'll have some more timing and details as we get into this. So you see the units there. I think most of those are represented in this call. For those that are not, they'll have the opportunity to watch the video, and Brian will send out this slide deck and what have you. All of the information in the slide deck tonight comes from the toolkit that was provided by National, and there will be a link to that toolkit in this slide deck. If you haven't already been given that link, you'll have it tonight. You can go back and dig into these details more than what we have put out here. Go ahead, Brian. So this is the roadmap, if you will, as provided in that toolkit, and this comes from the United Methodist Church. Basically, their question to their chartering congregations is that they need to make a decision. Do they want to continue to have, as a ministry, serving youth through scouting? If the local congregation says, no, we'd like to completely dissociate from scouting at this point in time, that's the left hand of your screen there. And bottom line, we would need to find new chartering organizations, new meeting locations, all of that kind of thing. And the boxes underneath kind of touch on that. And we'll get into that in a whole lot more detail, clear in some of the other slides. If the local congregation would still like to be involved with scouting, still support scouting, and would like the scouts to continue to be a ministry of their congregation and continue to meet and be active in their facilities, then we go down the right-hand side. Within that box that's underneath the "Yes, we still love scouts" graphic there, there's really two paths that a unit can go down. One, which is the far right, is where you obtain a facilities use agreement with your church to continue to meet where you've always met, perhaps have the same storage areas or, gear locations that you've always had, what have you. That requires a facility use agreement with the church, and will also require actually being chartered then through another organization. The left-hand side is if you would like to continue to work with the church, or the church would like to continue to work with scouts, you'd still meet there, but instead of finding another charting organization, you would be chartered through the council. And we're going to break down those legs here in the next few slides in a lot more detail. But the first question that needs to be asked of your current chartering organization is, do they still want to be involved with scouting? If so, can we still meet here? Do we still want to meet here? If not, then obviously it has to be a complete new recharter and a new meeting location and all of that. Next slide, Brian. So as I said, number one goal here is that we continue with uninterrupted scouting for our youth in all 22 of those units for the rest of this year and then beyond through one of those legs on that chart. We want the scouts to have a smooth transition from their current chartering organization to either a new chartering organization, which could be perhaps short-term in order to find a new permanent home, a new chartering organization already that is going to be their permanent home, or as a third option would be using Sagamore Council as the chartering organization. That is being sanctioned by BSA as an option as well. And then ideally, we would continue our current relationship with the churches without them being the chartering organization. I think most of us feel the best solution for the scouts would be for them to have as little change in their life. So they're still meeting in the same location. They're still doing things as they've always done, but behind the scenes, we will have set up new chartering organizations, be it a new organization or the council, whichever one works. But obviously, if they continue doing, every Wednesday night or whatever, they keep going to the Methodist church, that would be the least disruption to the kids. Next, Brian. Okay, so of those branches that were on that decision tree that the United Methodist Church provided, basically it boils down to one of several different options. The first option that's in blue, this is on another slide that is in that toolkit, but the first option is that the council is the registering chartering organization for the unit. And then the unit would have an affiliation agreement with the council. They would have a hopefully a facilities use agreement with the Methodist Church. The big things here are that the council would need to identify a institutional head. What is today probably the pastor at the church, the institutional head would have to be identified for each unit by the council. We'd have to identify a chartered organization representative for the council that would be the rep for that individual unit. Then the rest of the key people, the committee, the unit leaders, the committee chair, that would all be the same as always. Any equipment or gear that the unit has that is currently technically the property of their current chartered organization would go to the new chartered organization, which would be the council. Again, the desire here would be for things to be as much the same as possible. So, but any trailers or anything would have to be titled to the council instead of to the local Methodist church. Same way, any bank accounts would have to be under the council's EIN number and not your local Methodist church's EIN number. So that is one option. That's the blue column. The next option, there it is, would be for a new chartering organization that would step in and be the sponsor of the unit, but the unit would still meet at the Methodist church. So you would have an approved facilities use agreement. So you would go through the same process, only instead of the council identifying an institutional head, this new chartering organization, whoever they may be, would have, a pastor, organization president, whatever, that would be the organizational head, and they would identify a chartered organizational rep for the unit from their organization. So basically it would be just like we're doing now, but you would have this other organization chartering your unit instead of your church congregation. Everything else would be the same as the previous one. You get a facilities use agreement with your current congregation. You would keep meeting at the same place, but your properties, your checking account, all that kind of stuff would have to be through the affiliation with this new chartering org. So you would use their EIN number for your checking account. The trailer title would go to the new organization, be it an American Legion, Post, VFW, whatever. Maybe they don't have some place for you to meet, but by golly, you're still meeting at the United Methodist Church anyway, so that's fine. Third option, which is another color, green. The third option is you just change chartering organizations and move everything to the new chartered organization. There's no facility use agreement required for this because you're using the facilities of your new chartered organization. So be it a new church congregation or a Lions Club that has facilities you meet or whatever, you would have basically everything you have now, but with the new organization instead of the old. So again, you transfer vehicle titles, you transfer checking accounts to the new organization under their EIN number. The new organization would identify your chartered organizational rep. So basically, the second and third options are the same, except where you meet. This one, you would be meeting in a new location. You would not be meeting in your traditional Methodist church location. Now, the fourth option, which we do not recommend, the fourth option would be basically the parents forming a club or a group and chartering the organization through a parents club or a parents group. This is allowed. It can be done. It's just a little more complicated in that you don't have that ready infrastructure that you would have with a normal chartering organization. You don't have a EIN number that you could use. You would have to use an individual social security number. So there'd be tax implications with this process. The vehicle, if you have a trailer, the gear would be then in an individual's name. The bank account would be in an individual's name. So this one, while it can be done, can be a little bit more complicated for the leaders, for the individuals that are functioning as that parent group that would be these sponsoring organizations. So bottom line, we do not recommend this one, but it is published out there as an option from BSA. I see the comment there that it takes about 10 minutes to get an EIN online. That is true if you provide your personal social security number. That is something that I believe has changed from the IRS in the last year or so in how you get an EIN number. You would have to provide your own personal social security number. I have not done it since they've changed the methodology, so I can't speak to that in great detail. Let's see, I see there was Okay. So whichever process you choose, there are several different forms and paperwork that will be required to go through this. All of those forms, all of that paperwork is available in that toolkit that I talked about that BSA has provided. If you do not already have it, the link to the toolkit is here. It's basically a link to a document folder that you can download. There's like 20 different documents in that folder that you would download. These are some of them. You would have the affiliation agreement that you would complete with the Methodist Church if you were still going to meet at your local Methodist church. You would have an affiliation agreement if you were chartering through the council. You would have your normal chartering paperwork that you would do with the new chartering organization. There's forms for the transfer of unit funds and property that, you know, if you're moving from the Methodist Church to a new chartering organization, those will have to be filled out because all of the property is always technically owned by the chartering org. A bank account, what format you need for the letters that banks want to see, and you probably have to bring meeting minutes from your committee that's identifying who will be on the account, all of that kind of good stuff. So those guidelines and suggested formats how to do it are in there. And basically, new adult applications and new unit applications would have to be filled out if you have a new chartering organization. So you would have to fill out, just like you were creating a new unit, you'd have to fill out an application. And then you would have to, just like you're signing up for a new adult scout position, every adult leader in that unit will have to fill out a new adult application so that the new chartering organization can approve the leaders. That's a BSA requirement, is that the chartering organizations approve the leaders. So that would have to be done for the adults. The youth would not have to fill out new applications. If you're adding youth, as we go through recruiting here, those applications would be filled out and added. But for existing youth that are already in BSA's registration and are in Scout Book and all that, you would not need to redo those. Brian, is there anything there in the chat that I should speak to? I've seen a few things come in.
Sorry, I needed to get to where I could unmute. There was a question regarding, can we create a new Indiana nonprofit and make that the chartering organization? While you could do that, that'd be like going out and starting your own service club or civic club. You could do that, but that really overcomplicates this. It really puts liability in places where you don't want liability to be placed. And it really kind of falls under that fourth button of not recommended. There are plenty of other options that we can do that doesn't fall under that.
I would add one addition to that. Scout units, individual scout units cannot have their own not-for-profit status. So you cannot apply for a not-for-profit registration as a Boy Scout troop or Cub Scout pack or what have you. The council has that, but individual units are not allowed to.
Correct. Yeah, it would have to be the Rattray Scouting Service Club, and he creates his own nonprofit. And that, like I said, that just overcomplicates things. There's plenty of other ways we can solve these problems than to go that route. The only other question here, does the Friends of Troop X? Yes, that in essence is the fourth option that was not recommended, Jeff. Friends of Troop X would be a group of people coming together and creating something. There was a question about the affiliation agreement requiring new adult applications. The answer to that one is no. If the council is going to take on that charter, that is when the affiliation agreement comes into play.
Right.
And we already have approval for those adults. The only time the adult applications come into play is when there is a new chartering organization in play, because the new leadership would have to approve them.
And there's a question there about council as a chartering organization. We covered that. That was one of the options. The main thing there would be the charter filling out the unit and the council filling out the affiliation agreement, and you would have the council would have to identify a organization head for your charter and a chartered organization rep for your charter. They would be identified from the council office, who would be representing the council as your oversight, like you would have oversight today from a chartering organization. For council to take it, it would still be required that you would have transfer of ownership for the assets from your current chartering organization to Sagamore Council. You would have transfer of checking accounts from an account with your current charters organization and their EIN number to Sagamore Council under its EIN number. So, there would be some, there would be about the same activities that need to happen. Now, if the council is the chartering organization, they would have oversight and they would need to have annual review and all that of the budgets and of the checking account and all that, because they would have fiduciary responsibility then for the unit and its checking account, just like a chartering organization does now. Some chartering organizations watch that close and you have to review your monies with the chartering org. Others delegate it to the committee. The units I'm involved with, there are members of the church on the committee. They delegate it to us to keep tabs on that and make sure everything's according to Hoyle. So, but in this case, the council would have that fiduciary responsibility. All right. Again, all of this stuff is in that toolkit at the link. It is just a document folder, so you can download all the documents and read them at your pleasure.
And Kathy, one thing I would add to that, you mentioned that being the best option. The BSA collectively, I would say is suggesting that this is the option that we go, where we make all of our units chartered through the council and subsequently have the affiliation agreement. But that is not a decision that our council has made to date. The next slide actually speaks to kind of what the next steps are. And so I'll let Al cover them, but that is the recommendation from the national office, at least as a best method. We'll get into that here in just a second. I'm going to answer one question from the chat, Al, and then I'll let you keep going.
Yeah, I was going to.
So the question here was, would units have their own local bank accounts, or would the council hold the funds if the charter was with the council? So if the charter is with the council, we've got some things to work through there, right? In essence, all of the assets become the council's. How we navigate our way through that, in conversation, it's been, we would likely go to one bank and open up multiple accounts at that facility. And then somebody from the council would be on that account. And then your local unit leaders would be on that account as well. Obviously, it's your account to navigate your way through, managing that on an ongoing basis. But because you would be chartered through the council, you would be under our EIN number, and thus the bank accounts would fall on us. So I hope that answers your question. The next question here, does a unit chartered with the council have to use the council EIN number? No, they do not have to, from what we understand. Just like your current bank account does not have to go through your church and their EIN number. You can have your own EIN number and your own bank account. That's something that we're going to have to navigate as we work our way through that. If and when we decide that this is the direction that we want to go as a council, we'll then address how do we solve these problems on these individual units. But understand, none of what I just said about the council taking the direction of chartering these units is confirmed. We're going to be discussing that at an upcoming board executive committee meeting, and then making the decision and communicating that out accordingly. I'm going to let Al cover the next couple of slides, which kind of speak to what the next steps are in this process. And then if there's any additional questions, we can address them then. Al, go ahead.
Right. So as Brian said, the second bullet on this slide is that very thing. We need to talk through that with our executive committee in order to get blessing to have the council become a chartering organization through an affiliation agreement with each of the units that want to do that. So right now, it is our expectation that that will be an option. That is what National is presenting as an option, but we don't have the I's dotted and T's crossed until our executive committee gives us a thumbs up to do that. Really, the first thing we need from everybody on this call, from representatives from each unit, I should say, is to let us know what your desire is, what your thought is about where you're going to meet. Are you going to continue? Do you have plans to continue to meet at your church where you're at now? Does your congregation want you to still meet where you've always met, or do you need a new place to meet? And then if you need a new place to meet, do you already know of some place, or do you need help where we can work with you to try to find a location? Obviously, the last ditch would be providing facilities at Cary, Buffalo, or the Scout Service Center. But and then we would also like you to give us your preference as you're viewing it right now, to charter with an organization, a new organization, or to charter with the council. And we'll have affirmation hopefully very soon that council chartering will be able to go forward. But we just can't tell you definitively that we're approved to do that. From a timing standpoint, we'd like to have at the very least your current thinking on that by the end of next week. I mean, this is a real tight timeline that National and the United Methodist Church gave us. Originally, they gave us 4 months. Now they've extended it out at least to the end of the year. So we need to have all the units rechartered in the rechartering process at the end of the year. So talk to your churches, get with them really in the next week, and then report back through the link here to us what your desire is for your units going forward. Depending on what your desire, if your desire is an affiliation agreement with the council, if your desire is a new chartered agreement, whatever, start working that paperwork as soon as possible. We have October 1st down here as a target to get that completed, because that's when unit rechartering opens up for 2023. And basically, every unit will have to have all of this stuff nailed down before they can recharter for 2023, because obviously the last step in the recharter process is for your chartered organization rep to hit the button and say, yes, we're rechartering this unit. And your current chartering partner will not do that. So we will have to have another chartering partner identified, or the affiliation agreements with the council nailed down by the October timeframe to go through the rechartering process online. Now, the October date is driven by the rechartering. That it has to be done by December 15th for everything to be approved, all of the leaders to be approved by the new chartering organization. If you're going that route, all of that kind of stuff has to be done, I's dotted, T's crossed, money transferred, all that kind of good stuff by December 15th, so you can submit your new charter. So that's why the October 1 date is out there. I think that's about the last slide. All right, so there are a couple questions out there. Let's see what's in the chat here.
I think I got all the questions in the chat
Okay.
answered. I think to Jeff's question here, is going to be difficult to get an authoritative response from the church within a week. In some cases, Jeff, I would agree with you. In many cases, the people that are going to be making those decisions are on this call tonight. So in some cases, yes, you have to get back with your church and your chartering organization and ask those questions. But in many cases, the charter organization representative or the institutional head for the church is actually on the call tonight. So we understand it's a tight timeline, but if we don't know what the intentions are for these 22 units and 14 organizations, it's hard for us to navigate our way through the process. So the survey is pretty quick. It's like 10 questions, and it talks about what your desires are, what is the current status of your bank account, and where do you see things going from here, in essence.
And it's not like a legally binding commitment. This is where.
Yeah, correct. This is just giving us some information to work on.
This is where we think we're going. And if it changes 2 weeks from now, it does, but hopefully most of the units, this will give us a good indication of where the work's going to have to be.
I see another question here. If the council's our chartering organization, do we have to take the church's name off the flag? I would say if we're the chartering organization and you have so if we've done an affiliation agreement, the council is now the chartering organization and you're meeting back at the church, then I say leave the church name on there and be good with it, because the church still wants to have that relationship. If the church is walking away from this, then it's time to get a new flag, and you can see Emily in the scout shop. All right, I don't think there's any other questions in the chat function. I'll give everybody another 60 seconds or so to type those in. Yes, good flags are expensive. I agree. This has been recorded. When I send this out, it could be tonight, it could be tomorrow morning, depending on how crazy my kids are when we get off of here. The survey, or the PowerPoint itself, has links to the toolkit and the survey embedded into it, but I will also throw them into the body of the text as well, of the email that I'm going to send out. It looks like we don't have any additional questions. I covered sending this out afterwards. I will turn it over now to our Scout Executive and CEO, Alan Parks, for some final remarks.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate that. Just want to, first of all, say thank you to everyone that's on this call tonight. We really appreciate all the time, effort, and energy that you all have put into scouting, and just want to first say thank you, because we understand what it takes to make sure you have a scouting program and how it needs to run. So we really appreciate everything you all do for scouting. We understand that this is a difficult time for this transition. We know that you all are doing everything you can to make sure that your scouts don't experience any of that interruption, and we want to share that responsibility with you. So I do want to put a question out there and make sure, is there anyone out there right now that does not have a place to meet that we could potentially help you with? If there's someone that doesn't have a place to meet, please put something in the chat or let us know now, because we want to put that at the top of our list to make sure that as you go into the school year, we help you find a place to meet for your scouts. Looks like everybody's okay on that end. Well, that's great to hear, because the last thing we need is for a unit to pause their meetings or start late or something like that, that may discourage families from participating and coming back. So we really appreciate, we're glad to hear that you all have a place to meet. So you all have that survey link. Brian just dropped it into the chat. When you can, please let us know what your current situation is, whether or not you want to continue or you will be allowed to continue to meet at your church, and then what your preference will be when it comes to your new chartered organization. So we definitely will walk through this and we'll help you all get through it. If you have any questions, you have Brian, you have Al, you have myself, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. But again, thank you for what you do for scouting. There's no way possible that we could serve the youth and families that we do without you. We really appreciate it. Thank you guys very much. Brian, I'll turn it back over to you.
That's all I've got, guys. Again, I echo what Alan said. Thanks so much for your commitment to scouting. And if there's anything we can do to help work our way through this, don't hesitate to ask. I did drop the survey link and the toolkit link into the chat function. So we'll leave that open for a couple of moments here so that you can capture that if you want. Otherwise, it's going to come out in an email later. But just in case you wanted access to it, they're both in there. And we'll email tonight or tomorrow, and we'll move forward together on this and solve the problems that are in front of us and continue rowing a boat. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.